Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info coming at you live after the conclusion of the Iowa Corn 350. Welcome to Behind the Wall, the post-race show that comes on after the race, where unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, William Byron is back in victory lane after stretching his corn ethanol over a different pit sequence there towards the end, a bit of a bunch up there with the fuel mileage there at the finish, pending, of course, the results of post-race inspection, which should be interesting here at the same time. Your second place finisher is a pole sitter, Chase Briscoe, Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, and Ryan Preece in the top five, having three of the top five finishers be Fords, but a Ford not going to victory lane in this race here at the same time. So thank you everyone for tuning in here tonight. Got a little bit quite a bit of news that happened this past week here. We definitely wanted to go into that. As for the lead story with this race, I gotta say, even in setting up for the show tonight, I honestly don't know how to feel about this race, quite honestly. I kind of didn't really remember last year's race very well, other than the 80 family members meme, which was immediately rekindled this year, even with a different broadcast group there with Lee Diffie there. It didn't leave much of an impression on me last year. I know Kyle Larson struggled last year, and man, did he ever struggle this year again. I guess if nothing else, after seeing these couple of races, I guess we found a track that, he's definitely going to be struggling on, at least at this initial phase. If this comes back next year, I don't know if that's going to be the case there. But again, I mean, all things said and done, I'm glad it's selling out. I'm glad that it's, got a group of very enthusiastic fans out there. And it's good to see, and again, I think that's the important thing, at the end of the day. But, man, I don't know how to feel, about this car, and especially at the short tracks here. I know we've seen some really rough races at Martinsville and Bristol earlier this year that have just not been very good. And usually there's a little bit, else that's going on that makes it compelling, that makes it, have a good race here. But this one, I felt very, it was tricky to stay engaged in it. And the cautions didn't help either. I know that, they were mostly, single car incidents that were happening, especially in stage 3, what we had like 8 or 9 cautions, just over and over at the beginning. It was very hard to kind of get into a rhythm there. But then again, in the first 2 stages, you hardly had any cautions. You had long green flag runs, and it took just such a long time for anybody to set up a pass on the leader. Yes, we did have a good battle between William Byron and Brad Keselowski in the first stage, and that's basically what it was. It took the entire first stage for a pass to even be made, and it wasn't because of just 2 evenly matched cars and a bunch of great moves being made against each other. They were having just a terrible time trying to get around Byron, and having a equally hard time getting around the tail end of the lead lap cars. I mean, Noah Gragson, I believe, was the third from the last car at the time there. You had a couple of cars that were losing laps at the beginning, but Gragson just kind of hanging on there. And, really, it seemed like that was the biggest obstacle. And I know this is nothing new. We've seen this in Martinsville. We've seen this at Bristol, especially Martinsville. My goodness, it's been just a problem there. But, I mean, this car is just, it's really, really a problem at these short tracks. And I don't want to sound like the Johnny come lately on this, because again, it's not new. It's been a problem. It's been something that we've seen very, very small changes made, whether it's to the tire compound or this lower downforce package or anything. But man, it was brutal, I think, for a lot of this race. And we saw both ends of it again, because we had long green flag runs where whoever was up front was pretty much just large and in charge, and nobody else was going to be able to get up there. And then multiple, just so many single car spins and minor incidents there where I the way it felt to me, where a lot of these incidents were people just trying to make any move they could to get back up there, dive bombing into the first corner or into the third corner or something. And yeah, then they would spin out, and any of the cars that got a little bit of damage from those incidents, like we saw with Shane Van Gisbergen and Ty Dillon, they were really on the razor's edge, and they were going to be spinning out again, and ultimately both of them having second cautions along the way. So I don't know if it looked this way to people in the stands or if it felt this way to the drivers in the field. I think Kyle Larson's radio traffic is probably a good indication that it was as frustrating as it looked like, but it was such a challenge there in that sense, and I felt it felt frustrating to watch in that sense, and I don't. I'm not sure if I could go to the extent of it being a bad race, and it's certainly not the track. I would say it does seem to be just, again, another condemnation of this car and how miserable the short track package has been. That we should be having great races at Bristol and Martinsville and North Wilkesboro and here in Iowa there as well, Richmond too. But man, it was just like pulling teeth to get around there. And I couldn't help but think, especially in the opening of it, when Denny Hamlin was talking about the disadvantage of parity in this sport, where you have the cars be so equally matched, and in such a situation where they're going to be that equal, it's going to be that much harder to pass. And I think this was probably one of the best examples of that. Yeah, I mean, they got to figure something out here. I mean, have the tires have less grip, make the tires skinnier again, increase the horsepower, get rid of the under tray and the rear diffuser altogether, any number of combination of things. But I mean, this can't be the norm. And the other thing that was frustrating, even though it's the first race for NBC coming back this year, and it was great to hear Lee Diffie, it was great to hear somebody not Adam Alexander do the play-by-play for once, which was nice. And I think Lee did a commendable job there. Even from his standpoint, it felt like I was getting constantly sold in this race about how great this racetrack is. Oh my gosh, this racetrack just incredible and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I get it. It's great to have the fans are already there and they're excited to be there, and that's good. And this is a region that should have a track. But this was not the race to point at and say, look, this is the kind of racing everybody's waiting to see. I'm not so sure. It felt like, I hate to say it, it felt closer to what I see at the Atlanta races lately, where you have drivers that are kind of in formation, and it's like, okay, it looks cool, they fan out and everything, but they just can't get anywhere, and that just gets so irritating there in that sense. And I get that not every race is going to be equally competitive. And not every race is going to be, I don't expect it to be easy for people to pass either. But just to be able to, like, it just to have it. I mean, that opening stage, I can't believe it that it took that entire stage to have a 2-car battle there, and it was almost not enough time, by the way, when Keselowski got by. It's really rough. It's rough, and I hate to come off this negative here at the start of it. But I wasn't the only one seeing it. And the defensiveness I sensed from the booth. Jeff Burton coming out and saying, this is the way the racing is going to be all day, and you got to get used to it. I'm like, where is this coming from? Especially in the opening, 30 laps where nothing's really happened yet. I mean, it was crazy. It seemed like the only car that could get past really all day was Joey Gase. That was your last place finisher. Ended up finishing the race 10 laps down, still under power. And again, it's not about having a bunch of accidents. It's not about having a bunch of restarts, because this race had that too. And it really, it didn't seem to change the outcome of it that much. What it changed was the fuel strategy, which is what we've seen in so many of these other races here. And Brad Keselowski was just explaining it on the NBC post race here just now. All those cautions kind of put Byron and Briscoe into this other strategy where they could stretch their fuel much longer than they probably were going to coming into this final stage. And it worked out for them. And yeah, and thankfully we did have that. The best part of the entire race was in those last couple of laps where it's like, okay, Byron and Briscoe are backing up and Blaney is catching Keselowski, and you got 4 cars that are pretty close to each other, closer than they've probably been, for anything outside of a restart in this race. It just finally, worked out, and Byron was able to get there to the finish, and, he's to be applauded for that. But man, oh man, just a really challenging race to watch. I would say it just looked like it looked less like racing and more like traffic. And that was kind of a concern I had on this one. And this track is better than that. This track really is. And it's not, and again, it's nothing against the track. It's nothing against the fans. But they've got to figure this short track thing out, because this could have been a fantastic race. We saw a pretty solid Xfinity race here yesterday. Sam Mayer pulling off the win there. Congratulations to him. But my goodness, this was this was a tough one. This was a tough one. And seeing the leaders catch the tail end of the field and have such a hard time lapping anybody. The fact that you have 29, 30 cars on the lead lap here to finish, that just shows, again, it's not just the number of restarts and cautions we had at the end. It's just that when the leaders catch it, you can see it. It's like a conveyor belt. And, I'd had a harder time seeing this at Martinsville, but it seemed glaringly obvious in this one here that they just couldn't get around the tail end of the field. We saw it even at the end when you had Cody Ware and what was it? Zane Smith, I think it was, there right behind the leaders. And they just were right there, and they couldn't get away. And, it ended up being a significant factor in how this race played out and how much of a cushion that Byron had to the finish of the race there too. Just crazy. Even the cars that were damaged didn't drop off that much there. I mean, the margin was so tight that it really kind of, I think, was to the detriment of the racing there. And maybe mid-pack, there were moments, you had guys that were kind of getting up there and really getting in the mix. And it was good to see some drivers, like Austin Dillon have a pretty solid race today. Maybe the benefit of whatever's been going on over the Richard Childress racing team there too. AJ Allmendinger was in the top 10 for a good portion of this race. Unfortunately, he dropped back to 18th there at the finish. Yeah, just a very challenging race. I know the drivers are, going to be talking more about, how close they came to winning and so forth. But I imagine for those further back in the pack there, it really looked like that was the hardest thing for anybody to do out there. And even under, decent weather conditions, not, extremely hot or anything like that we've seen in previous races, and not an issue of tires going down or anything like that. But I think just almost road rage out there in terms of it. And, some may like that. Some may, see that and be like, wow, that's fantastic racing. But others, it's just, you can't get anywhere. And I don't want to keep repeating myself on it, but man, oh man, it became kind of a frustrating watch, just watching it as a fan and getting this discord there with the booth, just treating it like it was the greatest thing they'd ever seen. I'm like, I don't know what the heck you guys are watching. Even when all these cautions were happening, they didn't even seem to be beside themselves. Like what's causing all these yellows? So I don't know. But I mean, you can look at the lineups here. You can see like who's, going to be very frustrated at the end of it. Obviously Kyle Larson with again, another just awful performance in this race compared to last year, finishing in the 28th spot there. Denny Hamlin spinning out in traffic. I'll be interested to hear what his podcast is going to be like this week. Kyle Busch in a backup car, working his way up there, keeps getting scooted out of the way there, ends up back at the 20th spot there at the finish. I thought the team did a decent job getting a new car out there and trying to get some spots. But even at the beginning of this race, watching him pull away from Joey Gase at the very beginning, he was only gaining about 2 or 3 spots there in the opening run. And really had a hard time getting up there. Noah Gragson, the other driver that was penalized at the beginning, also in a very similar situation. So just a really difficult deal there. And again, maybe this is the kind of race that William Byron really does well in. We of course think back to the Martinsville, the 40th anniversary race he won last year, or some of these other very difficult to pass, very high track position dependent kind of races like this. It's difficult. I like following the pit strategy a bit, although it was very hard to do that with the cautions and how many of them we had here. It was good to see guys like Josh Berry and John Hunter Nemechek up there, although again, they kind of dropped off there towards the end of the race, seeing Berry in the 13th spot, John Hunter Nemechek in the 15th spot. Christopher Bell was one that the broadcast was kind of hyping up before this race, talking about him coming back from a backup car last year to have a good finish. In this case here, he's back in the 17th spot. Tyler Reddick with the spin there off the nose of Briscoe towards the end in the 19th spot. Yeah, you know, there's good for sure. I mean, Ryan Preece was very excited about this race. Of course, it was good to get some mention of his Xfinity win here. That got discussed in this broadcast too. But him finishing in the 5th spot there after starting 33rd on the grid, great recovery for him. Seemed like he was just kind of in the mix pretty much the whole race, and did a fine job out there too. So, and Bubba Wallace coming back from his altercation there, lost 2 laps. I believe he was 37th or 36th at some point. He wasn't in last place, but he was pretty close to the bottom. There was a whole knot of drivers that were 2 laps down for almost this entire race, and they were all trading positions. You had Zane Smith with damage, you had Ty Dillon with damage, then you had Bubba Wallace briefly with his right rear damage, and then getting back up there. I don't know how well this was covered in the broadcast there, but yeah, again, great recovery for Bubba there. I have no clue how he got back up there after all those. But again, the Indianapolis winner with a good finish. Carson Hocevar, same blush. Seemed like he was, him getting the Hurricane nickname from Lee Diffie there at the early stage of the race, and then he gets in a couple altercations there in the event. Still comes back and finishes in 8th. Joey Logano, didn't see hardly anything of him most of this race, coming back to finish in 9th place. So the rest of that top 10 there is very unusual. Didn't Alex Bowman have a problem of some kind? He had some kind of penalty there too, coming back to finish in 7th. Very, very surprising there at the same blush. Also, Chris Buescher, the other RFK car, when you had Keselowski and Preece doing as well they did. And again, Keselowski certainly should get the recognition for as strong as he was in this race. I mean, it did take him, again, that whole first stage to battle Byron. Looked very good in stage 2 as well. Was consistently in the top 5 there. But again, it seemed like there was always kind of a ceiling that everybody was hitting. And if, only a couple of people were able to kind of creep just past that. And, guys like Byron and Briscoe, I suppose, were able to do that on strategy. But again, some impressive runs for RFK Racing, Buescher's run notwithstanding. And even Buescher still finished on the lead lap in the 22nd spot, although, again, most of the field still did at the same time. We'll transition to kind of the last place battle there. This one fairly open and shut, very reminiscent of what we saw with Corey LaJoie at Richmond last year, which is the last time that a last place finisher of a Cup Series race finished the race under power. That one going into extra laps, so he actually completed more than the actual scheduled distance the race and still finished in last place, which is pretty extraordinary. Here in this case, the race just went to distance at 350 laps, and Joey Gase stayed about 7 laps down through his late pit stop there towards the end of the event. End up losing about 3 laps in the final stretch run there once the caution stopped happening, and ended up 10 laps down at the finish. But the King of the Hill car finishing in the 37th spot. Kudos to them on the paint scheme there and the promotion there, and the team was even having a lot of fun with it. Probably one of the best things from this one here was the radio traffic with Carl Long and the spotter and Joey himself having fun with it. Very reminiscent of the Days of Thunder or Talladega Nights discussions from some of the paint schemes we've seen that Kurt Busch ran back with Phoenix Racing years ago. Yeah, again, good, cool deal with the sponsorship there. Brought some other extra attention there, especially to Carl Long's team, as well as Gase's in the Xfinity Series program there. Unfortunately, not much that they could really do today. They were just well outside of it. They lost most of those laps in the first 2 stages, especially the first stage there. We're about 3 to 5 laps down at that point, and really at that when you had such low attrition, there's really no way you can climb out of that there. And basically, with 6 laps to go, they pretty much locked up the last place spot. Again, pending the results of post-race inspection, so we'll find out if that happens at the same time. But yeah, again, I liked the fuel mileage. I liked again, some of the paint schemes here and so forth. But I mean, this is definitely something that if you were going to make further arguments about this current short track package, this would be this one and that Bristol race earlier this year that Larson dominated, or the Martinsville race around that time too. It's just becoming a real problem, especially for tracks that are the bread and butter. I mean, you don't even have cars with like tire marks on them, even the ones that backed into the wall. You watch a race in Martinsville from 25 years ago, and even the race leader has the right side of their car tore up because they're knocking people out of the way and stuff. You just don't see that really that much. We definitely, I don't know what's going to take. I'm no mechanical expert or aerodynamicist or whatever, but somebody's got to figure this out. Because I don't think the craft of short track racing is served better by kind of a race like today. So it's unfortunate. We'll find out if that's going to be the deal down the stretch there, but I think it's another place to look at the same time. But yeah, man, oh man, I don't know. I still need to digest this one. I was taking a little bit more time trying to kind of figure it out, but I think that's just a way to just jump into it right from here. We'll kind of go, and I might have a bit of a shorter show here today. I'm still working on the video on the late Kenny Irwin Jr. I am still planning on releasing part 1 on August 5th, his birthday, coming up this Tuesday. I still have some graphics that I need to fit into it there, so I'm going to be working on that tonight, maybe into part of tomorrow, depending on how quickly I can render it and get it online. I still want to make sure that the Patreon has at least some advance access to the first part of the video. The second part will be then released the following week, so at least they'll have some more advanced access for the second part there too. Yeah, we're still working full speed ahead on that. Getting that together and looking to get that set up here for the channel very shortly here too. So yeah, if you're checking out videos on here, we're going to have some more of that for you in short order. Going into the Xfinity Series race, again, a more still kind of a low attrition event. Looking at the race results here, in fact, that was really very much a factor for Dawson Cram. Similar to what we had today with Garage 66, it was interesting listening to the radio and tracking what was happening with the 74 car out there. But Dawson Cram and team really just trying to make the most out of what was a difficult day for them. They spent most of the day in the garage area. An issue with the transmission, the shifter, the drive shaft, everything was kind of just, kind of working against them there. Pulled behind the wall about 10 laps into the race. Team spent about half an hour in the garage area, came back out about 60 laps down, and just looked to just outlast the competition and maybe climb a couple spots in the end of the race there. They were getting pretty close to about the halfway point. They set a mark where if they went past this, they weren't going to be able to gain any more spots. When it came short of that, the car started to pick up a vibration. When they believed that it was possibly going to be a wheel bearing issue, that they were going to park the car for the race. The team, I heard also on the radio that there was smoke in the cockpit, whether that was on the track or once they pulled into the garage area. Either way, that had pretty much ended their day at that point. And the attrition that happened in the rest of the field really didn't take place until the final laps of the event, with a couple of very different incidents out there. Mason Massey bouncing off the outside wall and dropping out of the event. There was suspension issues. Daniel Dye with a right front tire failure that sent him into the outside wall. Difficult deal there for a driver that's a little up there in the last car standings, though again, I'd say probably has had one of the more solid performances this year. The Kaulig Racing team, not so much in this race here, but overall this season, he just hasn't had quite the bad luck that we've seen out of Christian Eckes' team, for example, on the Xfinity Series side. Matt DiBenedetto in a really bizarre situation there. Ran in the back of Corey Day's car there on the track. Jamie McMurray seemed to make it sound like there was something deliberate, and I didn't really sense that from this. It just looked like one zigged and the other zagged, and Corey Day still being pretty inexperienced in the Xfinity Series, I think just kind of led to, a bit of an altercation there. And it is clear that he stoved in the nose. It was clear that was new damage, and yet the broadcast and NASCAR officials just watched as he pulled down to the track with smoke and oil and fluid coming out of that car, and didn't throw the caution until Brandon Jones spun in the fluid, and Brandon ends up with a 23rd place finish there. I don't blame him one bit for being upset about what happened there at the end. I didn't see any post-race interviews with him from that event, but clearly an outrageous situation, especially this close to the Cody Ware situation back at the Chicago Street Course. This one was clear as day. This one should have been a layup. That there was that much smoke coming from that car and pulling across the track there. Surely one of the track officials should have seen some fluid coming off that car. But for whatever reason, that wasn't the case. And DiBenedetto ends up out of the race there as well in the 35th spot. And again, Brandon Jones had his day spoiled by that incident there as well. In fact, finished the last car on the lead lap there at the finish of the event. But at the front of the field, though, we did have a great finish for Sam Mayer in a event that was dominated in the later stages by Cup Series regular Ross Chastain, looking to bounce back from his last place finish at Dover a few rounds ago there. The number 9 car had that mechanical issue there shortly before the rain came. But a fine run for Mayer here. I'm going to get some water here in just a moment. We'll jump right into that. Almost started talking into this thing with it mute on again. Okay. But yeah, I mean, my goodness. A tale of two races for sure. I found the Xfinity race enjoyable, even though Ross Chastain really shouldn't have been in the event there. We had some other Cup regulars in the field because of some other news from this week. Of course, Austin Hill being suspended for a week after his altercation with Eric Almirola last week. I'm glad NASCAR did something. I think that a one race suspension, I think, is probably fair. In these cases here, much like it was with Chase Elliott back at Charlotte or Bubba Wallace in Las Vegas. Yeah, I think that's the way to go there. Some consistency on that front, as with anything else, would be wonderful. But I think for a right rear in particular, you may as well just make that a rule, at some point. And now that has a bit more teeth to it, because of the restrictions in, losing playoff points and what damage that could do to your season. As much as I don't like the playoffs, if you got something else, you can kind of lord over these drivers that feel like they can just do that, especially at a track as dangerous as Indianapolis. Yeah, I think that's a worthy thing there. So I'm glad that got handled. As to, long term, what that's going to mean for Austin Hill and if he's going to maybe reel it in a little bit, I don't know. Only time's going to tell here. Like I said, last week we were talking about other drivers that, kind of been in this situation of being the common denominator, of having been ones where they're stepping on other people's toes and things just don't quite work out that way. We'll see if anything changes, but I think that's going to be something day to day. The other story that came up this week, at least on the Xfinity Series side, was that involving Josh Williams and the end of the experiment over there at Colleague Racing. Just a sad deal there in general. I hate it for Josh. I know that he became extremely popular after that incident at Atlanta where he walked out of the car. But even before that, he'd have a great presence in the ARCA Series. Running that applesauce machine there in the number 6 car for those many years. Had some surprising runs with Mario Gosselin, and getting some good performances there in between. I thought that, really once he brought that sponsor up there, he was going to have some good runs. But looking at his statistics there, no top 5 finishes, very few top 10 finishes. And just terrible luck. And it stayed the same on the Cup side too. When he was in a few Cup starts last year, same deal there. It seemed every week that it was just not quite working out. And, unfortunately something like that just happens. I mean, that's a part of the sport. You don't know if it's going to work until you put them out there. It's actually kind of a similar topic I'm discussing in the Kenny Irwin project, come to think of it. You still hate to see it. And I know Josh will find it, good soft landing somewhere, with his, the efforts he has when you have the camera he brings around in the garage area for, you got hospitalized children that are able to experience the garage, through the video teleconferences and such that he does. The other, and just him just being a great personable driver out there as well. I'm sure something will work out there as well. But I just hate to see that the Kaulig deal just didn't work out. Maybe it's something that's symbolic of, again, the issues Christian Eckes has had on the Xfinity side. We've seen engine failures out of AJ Allmendinger this year on the Cup side. Maybe there's something more that's going on behind the scenes at that team. I'd hate to see that because the Dude Bros over there have really grown that program by leaps and bounds from the trophy hunters they became, the Xfinity series and so forth. But maybe this is just a point where they need to kind of take a step back and see what's going on. As much as I'm not a fan of having Cup guys in the lower series, I can see why they're bringing a guy like Hocevar in there to at least evaluate their program and see what's going on. I mean, how much of it is the driver versus the equipment and so forth. Unfortunately, that becomes more common. We've seen this from even Cup teams as well, where they bring in Cup veterans after rookies there. I mean, AJ Allmendinger himself had to lose his ride at one point to Mike Skinner to try to help that team improve and wondering, when they were missing races in the Car of Tomorrow era, how much of that was their inexperienced driver and how much of that was a brand new team on the circuit. And, it kind of seemed to be a little bit of both at that point. So it's a difficult deal there. It's a difficult situation there. But again, it's something that hopefully will work out for the best of those organizations. So in that field there, we had Austin Dillon driving in the place of Austin Hill. He spun on lap 2, I believe, in the Xfinity race and came back and finished in the 14th spot there. Carson Hocevar driving the number 11, finished in the 6th spot in Josh Williams' car. So even he couldn't get a top 5 finish out of this race here as well. We saw the usual back and forth there. Justin Allgaier looking good, at least being in and around the field there, but it always seems like it's a 50-50 split as to if he's able to actually pull off a victory or just have something terrible happen, whether he gets spun out or a bad incident on pit road or something happens. In this case here, Allgaier, just gets the short end of the stick here, finishing back in the 16th spot there. Meanwhile, Jesse Love looked very good from the pole position there, leading 31 laps. Chastain again in the other JR Motorsports entry, teamed with Allgaier and so forth there, leading 120 laps. Then you got to get into the story of what's going on with Connor Zilisch and that beautiful KOA paint scheme out there. He looked like he was going to just have this race in his back pocket. That opening stage there, he just kind of cruised. He was able to get a big lead. But that extra pit stop really, really put him in a tough spot there. Wasn't impressed with his comment about Parker Retzlaff that he was racing with. Retzlaff, actually, according to the Alpha Prime team, has actually really been improving these last few races, I think since Sears Point. So it's good to see kind of a turnaround from that 4 team out there. But at the same time there, Zilisch, after all those wins this year, coming into this event and looking like he was going to be a surefire factor, at least in the finish of it here. Still not quite able to pull off the win, but getting a 4th place finish, still a solid run there out of him in the number 88 team. But not quite the victory they were looking for. Harrison Burton with a solid run. It was good to see him get a decent amount of camera time there in the race, finishing in the 5th spot after starting 17th on the grid. Didn't lead any laps, but it seemed like he was, just kind of really trying to get that AM Racing team right back to where they were back when Brett Moffitt was driving that car, and before that awful season they had last year with Haley Deegan and other drivers taking over. Even Joey Logano blowing engines at Darlington and Josh Berry crashing out at the opening lap at Indianapolis. Seemed like they just couldn't do anything right, no matter who was driving the car. It's good to see some stability out of the 25 team, although it does remind me that, we really haven't seen them in the top 10 as much as we saw this past weekend there too. But all of this secondary to the man of the hour. Congratulations to Sam Mayer for pulling off the win there in the Xfinity Series race. Touched on this a bit earlier. Much to, it seemed like, the complete surprise of the broadcast booth out there. I don't know what races they've been watching, but it seems like every week when I turned on the Xfinity Series races this year, I've seen that green and white Audible car right there in the top 5, with Sam Mayer right there, just waiting to pull off, a win. If things worked out this way, if maybe this draft or that draft at Daytona, or maybe this tire, change or that one at Bristol or wherever else it's been this year, he's been right up there every single week. And, unfortunately, we haven't seen Sheldon Creed up there quite as consistently. He's had some good runs as well, of course. At the Chicago Street Course, he looked very good, and some other races this year. But that 41 car, they've been absolutely pounding on the door of getting a win this year, and it was very, very impressive. And even to the point where CW noticed this in their advertising, mentioning that Sam had won this race last year, of course, back when he was driving for JRM. But it seems like this network has a blind side where if you don't drive for Dale Jr.'s team, it's like you don't even exist, or if you don't drive for a Cup team. And that Haas Factory team, I've mentioned it a lot on this show, and this very much continued this week. I've been so impressed with how well they performed on the Xfinity side. On the Cup side, yeah, they got a lot of work to do. Cole Custer's run at Mexico City is pretty much about the only highlight they've had on that side of the aisle this year. But on the Xfinity side, and especially that 41 team, they've looked fantastic, and they could well be world beaters this year. If this win here sets them on a course where they can really be competitive, yes, it's Ford's first win on the Xfinity side this year, and yes, that came well after the halfway point. They could be really tough. I mean, Sam Mayer didn't just forget to drive just because he's not driving for Dale Jr. anymore. He's still a really talented competitor in this series, and as he showed, he was able to get a big lead there at the end and hold off for the final 28 laps of that event there, and I thought that was very impressive. This was not a dominant performance, but he was right in the mix like he had been all year, and when things opened up, when you had like the Matt DiBenedetto incident, or you had other drivers on different strategies or other guys falling back or bad penalties, he's the kind of driver that could just capitalize on that and get a good finish. So I would expect to see that 41 car it continue to be in the mix for the rest of the season. And we'll find out if that's going to be the case. And I hope that gets more attention at the same time. During this race, Mark Martin was tweeting about how the playoffs were just so central to this broadcast of this race, and talking about the playoffs at the cost of anything else in the event. And couldn't agree more. Very much like, again, talking about the Haas Factory team, it seemed like we only got a little bit of a mention of it right in the last lap of the race there about the 41 team and how they hadn't won this year, how they hadn't won since literally the championship race last year when Stewart-Haas Racing had its last start and Riley Herbst pulled off the win in the championship event there at Phoenix. But again, that was a whole other organization. Now they've kept this Xfinity program going. It's completely reincorporated and like stripped down and back to its elements. And I really thought at the beginning of this year that they were going to really be struggling. And it's like, oh man, these guys are going to be kind of like what we've seen with Cole Custer on the Cup side. I thought they were going to really have problems, even though Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed are two of the best, probably two of the more underrated drivers here in the Xfinity series, especially with guys like Connor Zilic kind of taking the center stage now and Jesse Love becoming a factor here. But you can't overlook them. You just can't overlook them because on the right day, they'll be right there in the mix. And it was exciting to see. So I hope we see more of it. I hope we see more of it. And I hope they get more of the attention that they deserve the rest of this season, and we'll find out. Sometimes there's just blind spots. I felt the same way with John Hunter Nemechek. Like he was getting all those wins. It was almost the opposite. Like he was getting all these wins in the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, and yet everybody's like, oh, Justin Allgaier, and oh, Cole Custer, and oh, all this, and like, why aren't you focusing on the one Toyota guy that's getting all these wins? Wins the last race at Fontana, and so forth. This was 2023, of course. I thought he was really impressive, and yet all the way through the championship race, I don't feel like they ever really gave him a shot at actually taking the title there. And ultimately he didn't, and it went elsewhere, but still, he was right there and got all the way to the championship 4. And that's why I've always been very bullish on him in the Cup Series too. And it's been so invigorating to see him compete so much better on the Cup side this year with Travis Mack as his crew chief and the good runs he had. Again, was in top 5 for a portion of today's race too, before things kind of came undone there towards the end. So again, and these are the kind of stories that we should be talking about, because again, there's an entire field. You got 38 cars in Xfinity. up to 40 in Cup, 36 in trucks. It's not just a story of one or two guys up front, and it's not just a story of whoever spins out in the race or something like that either. You can find it anywhere. And what's wonderful about this is tracking it week to week. And this is kind of my long arc back into Mark Martin commenting on this. It's like, yeah, what's going on in the race? Who's doing well? Who's doing badly? Who's continuing momentum from earlier this year? And, who's, suddenly stumbling for the first time, maybe in several weeks. Those are the things to kind of figure out. The problem is that's all been conflated into the playoffs, because now it's entirely about, okay, who's on the bubble, who's going to be in position, who's going to actually win the race. And then that's just such a small subset of what happens. The championship, of course, is important. It's always in the background there, but I still always like the view of the mountain in the clouds, where you don't see the summit until you're a lot closer to it. And until then, when you're, in base camp, you can just kind of try to imagine what it's going to look like or what the journey is going to be like, but you don't know that. Again, that's just, my 500th rant about the playoff system there at the same time. But it's so refreshing to see Mark Martin come out here and be as vocal about it, especially with the revelations we're hearing about the how much power the broadcast networks have over the championship format. I'll tell you this, if this is really the case, and I suppose it is, where the broadcast, are able to determine, it's like, well, we want to have playoffs, or we want to have a one race winner take all championship there. If that's the case, if they have that much influence over the way the season plays out, they have zero excuse to just do such a slipshod job of covering what happens in the race. Own it. If you want to form, the sport in this image and take this direction with the sport, then you should have such complete mastery over what happens through the entire field here to your playoff system. You should be able to be the ones that should be, really, really good at capturing what's happening. I don't get, like, we're going to be this focused on having this championship format, yet we're also going to take this kind of distant approach to what's happening in the race. Not so much, again, with, Prime and NBC. I think they do a better job, but think it back to what we saw with Fox. Of course, then you got the IndyCar aspect with Fox too, which I guess complicates that even further. But, just crazy, because again, a race like this one here, where you're talking about, the theme of this race here for this Xfinity race should be Sam Mayer getting the first win for the Haas factory team, and talking about all that's had to happen behind the scenes to get this team going after, Tony Stewart pulled out his interest there, and what the expectations were and what other races they've been doing well in. Yeah, they mentioned the second place run in Indianapolis, but it didn't start there. It started all the way back in Daytona, and seeing that 41 car right back up there, seeing Sheldon Creed up there, the 00, and the run that they had, and what their intentions were for this season. Was this going to be a rebuilding year for them, or did they expect to be fast right outside the box as if nothing had changed from last year? And what does that say about Tony Stewart and, and what his role had been at the team up to that point? Discuss things of that matter, and then also too, Ryan Sieg, I was tweeting about this and Mark Martin mentioned it there as well, rather liked it on Twitter there. The Ryan Sieg deal. It's like, the story isn't, oh, Ryan Sieg's trying to get into the playoffs. Oh, he just wants to make sure he's in the playoffs. I'm sure that's true to a certain extent. But I'll tell you this, that dude wants to win. He wants to win an Xfinity race. He still hasn't won one. That should be where the conversation starts. The championship and all that, that's a bonus. That's somewhere further down the line. Let's talk more about, like, the fact that he hasn't won. What were the close calls he's had? How much this team has progressed in the Xfinity series and in the truck series. That should be the focus. And that's just talking about two guys in a 38 car field. Talk about the guy that finished first and the guy that finished eighth. And it doesn't have to do anything with the playoffs. And I just don't get why we can't just get back to that. So, again, I think that's why people are so vocal about this format, because it does kind of force their hands to a certain extent, or at least they use it as an excuse to kind of just let the stories be written for them, because it's going to be 16 and then 8 and then, then 4, or 16, 12, 8, and 4. It's still going to be, that kind of a story there too. But I mean, there's so much more that's happening, and it's selling these races short. I mean, if you only want to focus on 16 guys, you may as well just have 16 car races out there, and who's going to want to watch that? So I don't know. I don't know. But I sense we're probably on the eve of some kind of, reconciliation on this. I mean, I don't know. Again, it's good that Mark Martin's being outspoken on this. And, we're hearing bits and pieces more of what's happening behind the scenes. And then you got the lawsuit on top of it. What factor is that going to play in all this? I don't know. But that was kind of the thing that was frustrating there. And again, I'm saying this from the standpoint of somebody that I didn't grow up watching the Xfinity series. I really didn't. I wanted to see Cup guys win Cup races and Cup championships, and that was the big thing. And Cup guys running the Xfinity series didn't make me want to watch the Xfinity series back then. Okay, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of that either. Even when it was like guys like Mark Martin or something in there. I just didn't watch those. I didn't. I wanted to watch the Cup races. I wanted to buy the Cup merch. I wanted to buy the Cup diecast. That was my focus. And one of the things I loved about that was, that they had those stories you could develop through the year. How's Kevin LePage doing? How's Jerry Nadeau doing? How's Ricky Rudd doing? Or any number of drivers out there. And ones that in your mind as a fan, you kind of grow up. It's like, oh, here's the ones I like, and here's the ones I don't like. And I want to see what happens when they go, they race each other. And I'm sure those that did grow up with Xfinity or the Truck Series, they felt the same way too back then. Whether it was, your Ron Hornaday and Jack Sprague battles in the Truck Series, or the standalone guys like Mike McLaughlin in the Xfinity Series, or Jason Leffler, or Randy LaJoy, or guys like that in there, they absolutely had that too. I mean, the wonderful thing about experiencing at least the way that I did is I can watch those races now and enjoy it in that same sense. It's like, wow, this is where, these guys came from or something. So, a guy like Randy LaJoy, I just think of his 1995 season and how he only ran a part of the year for the MBNA car for Bill Davis. I don't think about the championships or the times driving for Base Motorsports and all that. But you can discover this whole other aspect to that driver's career. And that's exciting. It really speaks to something. And again, I know, again, I bring all this up in the context of saying we can have that again. It's going to take a willingness to, and I think understanding the problem is, again, the first step in it. And I'm glad we're starting to kind of get little pieces of it here where it's like, okay, maybe the cart's not before the horse here. Maybe it's not NASCAR. Maybe it's literally just the broadcast partners themselves, and they're not beholden to anything. They can determine the championship format and whatever it is. It's like, okay, well, maybe that's the direction to kind of go. So I don't know. I don't know where it's going to play out, but it would be nice to see just that kind of embrace a bit more. And I don't see that being an overnight thing. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's going to take work. And I know there's people out there that are willing to do the work, and that's good out there. But as long as we're kind of on that progression, I think that's going to be the important thing. So again, congratulations to Sam Mayer. I think it's a wonderful story. I don't do a lot of videos on current topics outside of my opinion videos on this channel. I feel like I already do a lot of that with the Last Car website and these streams here, but I haven't ruled it out. And one that I probably would like to talk about would be something like the Haas Factory team's run this year, or guys like Ryan Sieg or Sheldon Creed trying to get their first win. Those are compelling, and those are things that I do enjoy, and those are things that bring me back into the sport. And for you guys here watching, maybe it's something else. Maybe you guys follow the folks over there at the Alpha Prime team. Certainly Tommy Joe Martins has been a great ambassador to the sport, also helping out as a spotter there for the Live Fast team. Take your pick, that's the wonderful part of it. I think an experience, I think the TV should reflect that. There's this disjoint now between the TV experience and the social media experience. And in some ways, those are separate for a reason. But then in other ways, there actually are some things that maybe could be picked up that would enhance that even more. And maybe we'll get there. Who knows? You may notice that I'm kind of wearing a different outfit here for the show today. I'm bringing out my Club Racing Incorporated shirt here, as well as my Stuart Friesen hat, because I do not want to ignore a couple of compelling, again, on the subject of compelling stories from this week, especially stories that are definitely more the more serious challenges that can happen in the sport. I certainly want to address these here too. Of course, we talked on last week's show about Stuart Friesen and the disqualification that he had at IRP for a failure in post-race inspection. News subsequently came out that, of course, that infraction was, or that penalty was upheld. But unfortunately, that news came out after a serious accident that Friesen had at a big block modified race on a dirt track up in Quebec. And there was the footage, of course, was already shown online there as well. Glad to hear that, you know, he was conscious after the accident, that he's been treated, although with very serious injuries, fractured pelvis, fractured leg. Jessica Friesen, kudos to her for providing a lot of updates under what I'm sure have been unbelievably difficult times there. It was a very, very serious accident. But you know, and hopefully, you know, they showed a picture there where, you know, it's amazing to see the man smile after all that. It's shocking. And again, it's something that we do forget, I think, in this sport. And I know we're talking about something outside NASCAR sanctioning here in modified circuits there, especially up in Canada. But the point remains, I mean, motorsports is still a dangerous deal there. And you could have the best safety equipment out there and truly try to, at least, you know, thank God the man's still with us. But you know, again, you know, certainly hoping for a swift recovery for him there. At least hope that he's certainly more comfortable than he was after the incident that happened back on Monday there. You know, it sucks on this, on top of the sense of that too, that, you know, he's not going to be able to, finish a season where we saw him come back to victory lane in Michigan. But of course, all that is secondary to, of course, his well-being on that. So I picked up this hat a while back with his number 44 on it. I wanted to make sure to bring that back out here on the show there at the same time. So certainly hoping he's doing better. We have had reports this past week that Christopher Bell is going to be running his truck for the upcoming race at Watkins Glen next week. And I'm sure things will be on a week-to-week basis after that. So we'll find out what the story is there too. Also on the same note there, we had the other situation there for Alex Club. I don't really talk about ARCA too much on the show here, but I definitely want to for a couple of respects here this week. This was the race we had back in Iowa on Friday. I was able to actually watch that race. I don't usually get the chance to watch the ARCA races live there, but I had something work out there where I was able to kind of catch that on that afternoon there, and I'm glad that I did there. You know, Alex Club's team is one of those smaller programs out there that's really trying to just make ends meet in that sport. The Morristown Missile is what's on the back of this shirt here for the number 03 out there that Alex runs. We met him back at Rockingham and Talladega this year, in Kansas last year. You know, they're just, you know, very similar to Wayne Peterson's team. And Brad Smith's team and some of those other organizations, Andy Hillenberg's program there. It's definitely the story of the haves and the have-nots in that circuit. And, of course, you know, we heard about Mike Harmon's team last week where they had the truck breakdown and they almost didn't make it to Indianapolis. Very similar arrangement for the club team that they have, you know, pick a dually, bringing a trailer back from the track. There was an accident on the highway there leaving Iowa. Apparently the driver, according to the reports I'd heard, that the driver fell asleep, crossed the median. Thankfully, the driver, nobody was injured or anything in this incident. However, the trailer did roll over, and according to the club team there, some, if not all, of the equipment for the number 03 was lost in the accident, if not seriously damaged, just unusable. And the team has since put out a GoFundMe. They said that they haven't typically had to do that in the past there, but this is definitely a situation where they're trying to just keep this organization going. So I've retweeted that on the page there as well. You can definitely check out Alex Club's We get the Club Racing Twitter on here as well. Yet at Club Racing with two B's, CLUBB Racing Inc. That's the Twitter handle there for them. Definitely give them check them out for more updates on that. And it was heartbreaking that this happened there at the same time. I mean, again, I'm so glad everybody was okay, because of course this is how he lost James Harvey Hilton in the Sun tweet those years ago there with a traffic accident leaving Talladega. I mean, equipment can be replaced, but people certainly can't. But again, one of the things that's great with this team and is they give drivers a chance to make their first starts in the series. And indeed, we saw this back at Iowa. Colby Evans, friend of the website, I want to congratulate him on living a lifelong dream for him to make a start in the ARCA Menard series, which he did. And in fact, did not finish in last place, mind you, as well. Although if he did, hey, again, look, there's only so many people that get the opportunity to start these races. But he was driving the team's second car, the number 86, started last in the 24 car field there. And then coming up there in this particular race. And let's see, where was it? And let's see, I had the IRP stats in front of me here. But he did have a, there we go, yes, 27 car field there. But Colby Evans finishing in the 23rd spot there for him. And thank you as well to him for getting the last car logo on there. Couldn't help but jump on board. I had the good fortune to meet Colby at Kansas last year while watching the ARCA action out there as well. And I guess it was the ARCA and the Truck Series that particular day. But yeah, big supporter of the small teams. Love following his Twitter feed there at Start and Park Car. He also provides a lot of pictures there for the Last Car page there as well. So always appreciate what he's able to do there on that end. And yeah, extraordinary. Now, it was good to see a lot of people paying attention to this story here and him running that race. Unfortunately, it did have a mechanical issue. I believe it was a transmission problem from what was reported there on his social media there, but did finish ahead of 4 different drivers, including Brad Smith, the last place finisher, Trevor Ward, and Mike Basham for the Hillenburg effort, and Chris Wright involved in a crash after 27 laps there. Wright returning to the ARCA series after losing his Xfinity deal with Our Motorsports just a couple weeks ago. So kudos to Colby there on the deal there at the same time. As for the race win there, Brendan Queen with the win, 112 laps led, the 150 laps completed there. Good to see Lawless Allen in the top 5. We spoke with back at Talladega earlier this year, and so forth there. But yeah, we'll have more on that on the Last Car website later this week. We can do the coverage there for the ARCA series here at the same time. So there is that. Let me get back to my notes here. I'm sure I got some other ones. Make sure I didn't get that. Okay, yeah, that's most of what I had here on the same time. Alrighty. We'll get into trivia here in a little bit. Let's see here. Yeah, that's right. We had Xfinity. We didn't have trucks this week because trucks come back at Watkins Glen. So I guess we don't have that there at the same time. Yeah. So again, it will probably be a bit of a shorter show here today, folks. But we'll go ahead and I do have something for show and tell. So let me do that there at the same time. Let's see. New. Alrighty. So we'll do some trivia questions here. Let me know in the category which category you'd like here in the chat, and we'll do some questions here for the latter part of the show, and then I'll do the show and tell segment here at the same time. Let's see here. So again, the categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Go ahead and mention which category you'd like: NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Let's see here. Yeah, Marcus. No, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I try to bring out different shirts here on the show here. I'm afraid it's one of my. I don't do as much. I collect more diecast when I was younger, and then I've kind of shifted to like shirts and hats like lately. So I don't have one for everybody in the field there, but I try to be prepared as much as I can from one story to the next. But definitely for with the stories this weekend with both the club racing team and Stuart Friesen, definitely wanted to fly the colors here tonight. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely take a look at that there too. Thoughts on Chicagoland returning? I see your comment there, Ryan. Yeah, I mean, it could be good. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of anticipation of, ironically, getting some mile and a halves back on the schedule just because this car performs so well there, and we've seen like how well the races look at places like Kansas, and how it's turned things around at Charlotte and stuff. Even though again, it needs a lot of work at the short tracks. At this point, you probably want to have a dedicated short track car, kind of reverse engineer back to an era where we had cars for certain certain tracks, a road course car, a short track car, and so forth. We might end up just kind of back down that road again. But I'm open to it. I hear the Joliet area is a nice area. Lastbro went traveling through there before, and it's certainly worth a try. Um, I don't feel like the Gen 6 era was very kind to that track. It feels like that's when we had like the whole streak of races where kind of like today, where just nobody fell out of the event. And it, maybe didn't seem like the most competitive racing out there. And again, drivers falling out of the race is only like one measure of it, but it was the one that was most glaring, I felt, Chicagoland there towards the end. I think they had a streak of like 2 or 3 in a row where like nobody fell out of the race and everybody was within about 15 laps of the leader, which is pretty extraordinary even under the old car back then. But yeah, I'm open to it. We'll see what happens. Yeah, late Gen 6 wasn't kind to any track. Yeah, that's true. That's true. 611 Hornet, especially yeah um they had the different package they were doing, the 550 and all that. Yeah, that was not fun. That was not fun. But again, I think we're maybe with this car we're seeing some new deals there at the same time. Let's see here. I'm gonna get some more water here in just a moment. All righty. So we still got a couple picks coming in here. We'll go ahead and do our show and tell segment here in the meantime while everybody makes their picks. So, a while, would you guys like to do an unboxing? Would you like to do an unboxing? I know you guys probably would. We had something coming in this week. And our good, from our local post office here. And, oh dear. Oh dear. Well, look at this. It's got a little bit of crush factor, I guess, as Joe is hungry would say here. Yeah, it's a little. Don't worry, I marked out my address and stuff on here. But yeah, I this came in earlier this week, and it's a little beat up here. But I know we had that a while back with some diecast there, and saw how it would come out. I think I remember what this was, so we'll find out, and we'll see on the show here what we got here. So let's find out. Alrighty. And make sure to keep it up by the camera here. So hopefully, there we go. Okay, it's got bubble wrap, so it's probably in okay shape here. Oh, looks like it is. Alrighty. And here we go. Talking about the old school diecast. Check this out, folks. How about a 1995 Jeff Burton Raybestos Ford? Okay, I was wondering where this went. Oh yeah, let's bring this bad boy out. Kudos to the shipper for making sure this was packed safely here. Looks like it came through beautifully. Beautifully. All right. There we go. Let's bring that. Okay, hang on. Camera's a little too far away. How about this? There we go. There we are. See, now wouldn't this be wonderful? Have something like this for current drivers today. In fact, of course, Jeff Burton now sits in the booth here back then, but this was very interesting. I remember this was mind blowing in '95 because the old Racing Champions cars were very, very simple and very, very heavy, and they the body styles only kind of approximated kind of what the cars looked like back then. But in 1995, they upgraded the tooling and they kind of went with this body style, which is still pretty different from, I guess, like the action racing stuff these days. It kind of made the car like a little bit stubbier, but a little taller, and then the bigger wheels on it. And then they had like a detailed chassis under, which is, probably pretty quaint compared to what's available these days. But these were great. I think that I was struck by this one because I actually didn't remember them actually making this particular car that year. I remember the '94 version, the blue one with the white numbers. But this is the kind of thing with diecast that I think would be so popular today. I know that we have the store-bought versions of it, the Authentics line and stuff, but it's gotten to the point now where they very quietly kind of phased out like having any kind of a trading card there or anything. Like we used to have cards, and then we had like plastic hoods, and then we had stickers, and then we had smaller stickers, and then they just kind of went away. And now you just have the card like have the driver's name on it. And, okay, the car ultimately is what you're buying, but how many of you, I mean, you guys out there, I mean, I sense you get a good mix of like older and younger fans out there. If you made a car, say like a Tyler Reddick or something like that, and you had like a little trading card, you had like a little stand you could put the car on, so you could like display it on your shelf or something. And then, like a little trading card with like driver's autograph printed on it and their picture. And then on the back of it, of course, it had like his date of birth and his hometown. Now, obviously, we live in the internet age. We can get all this information very easily, but it was always great when you had this in a store, and then, you'd had that information like right there, and then you would learn about each of these drivers. And again, for me, like, I see a cup car. I mean, that was always the thing. It's like, okay, which one of these are Busch cars or ARCA cars or anything like that? They always had that mixed in there. And again, I was never a big fan of it. Also, the price too, $1.77 at Kmart on here. I remember it was $1.89 here in California. It always has to be a bit more expensive out here, I suppose. But I don't know where exactly this was picked up from. But this was just the coolest. I mean, my goodness. I'm trying to remember how much Hot Wheels cost back then. Like, I know Hot Wheels are still like about $1, maybe a little bit more now. I seem to remember they were still $1 back then, but maybe they weren't. Maybe they were like 50 cents. I don't know. I never really thought about it. But I know that these with the card and so forth were always a bit more. But I mean, I loved the style they did. They kind of upgraded the nose of the car and kind of put like some road course grills on the front of it there, and just gave it some personality. But beautiful scheme. I love the bright orange numbers on there. They had some other versions with like dark blue numbers on there. And they kind of phased this into their truck series design too, the Liberty Racing trucks around then. But so kudos. No, I'm glad they came through. Okay, I saw that box come in. It looked like somebody just straight up stepped on it. So I'm glad it didn't. And then, those of you following this on here, you got all the small print on the back. I know we talked about this on the show a while back, but the print on the back about listing all the other different teams they had, you wouldn't get like a checklist. And of course, you didn't have the internet back then. This being 1995 right here. I think even NASCAR.com didn't come out until 96. But you'd have to look over the old manufacturers here. Where is it? So you got like you got Ford, Pontiac. Okay, you got Citgo. So you got Morgan Shepherd. You got DuPont. So you got Jeff Gordon, Exide Batteries. So it's still Jeff Bodine. Family Channel for Ted Musgrave. FINA for Randy LaJoy. Finger Hut Racing. That's actually kind of like 94. That's like Mayfield and Derek Cope. And then the list goes on there. So That was always fun. Even then, and then even some separate logos down here for Bill Elliott, Derek Cope, and Jeff Burton. Names and likenesses licensed by Advantage Management Incorporated of Nashville, Tennessee. And then another one here, Motorsport Traditions had the rights to Ricky Craven, Jeff Gordon, Bobby Labonte, Terry Labonte, Kyle Petty, Ken Schrader, Jimmy Spencer, and Michael Waltrip. So yeah, very specific rights on the back of it there too. But what fun! I mean, just a different year in the licensing, and obviously if you're trying to find a Dale Earnhardt car, it was harder back then because it would just be one out of like 40 in a box, and you'd probably have more likely find something like this. But yeah, how much fun back then. So yeah, so kudos to the individual that sent that there as well. I picked this up on eBay there a couple weeks ago there, so I'm glad that came through okay as well. Alrighty. Where are we with the categories here? Oh gosh, I got a Beast of Metal message here too. Oh goodness, dude, you didn't have to do that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much there for the super chat there, Beast of Metal, for $20. No broadcast partner deserves that level of control over a league's format, especially when they operate at the level of a store brand car battery like NBC does. Oh yeah, our battery metaphor from a while back. The Glen will remind us all they can't shoot road courses either. Well, yeah, that's always the tricky part there at the same time. But yeah, let's see here. Oh, I see you're talking about the horsepower changes there. So yeah, so thank you again for the super chat there, Beast of Metal, and definitely, yeah, I mean it is frustrating, but I mean I'm glad we're hearing about it, so at least maybe it's a step towards finding whatever the solution is. I always feel like some of the I can't tell how many of the decisions that are made these days are just because the decision is easier or because somebody's hands are tied by somebody else and so they can't do it any differently. It's like, oh, you can't comment on things that are happening that aren't happening on screen. Like I think Junior's departure from NBC for Amazon was pretty eye-opening in that regard. But yeah, I mean, maybe we're, again, maybe we're getting closer to figuring it out. So hard to say there. Yeah. And as to the road courses, yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, I think I hope that we get an improvement over what we saw at the Chicago Street Course. Because even Junior himself was pretty upset about how that broadcast went recently, which is unfortunate because there was so much that was happening, and ultimately not understanding what was happening on the track was critical at the end in the Cody Ware accident too. But yeah, I mean, there really does need to be some kind of, I don't know what the restructure is going to be. It may just have to be some major contractual change there. And if we're not reaching that point, if we've already entered into a new one, maybe we're not at that point right now. But again, I'm encouraged by get people like Eric Brennan and some of these other broadcasters in there that have a fresh take to it. That's what I want. I would love to see kind of a competition between these networks. They're too interchangeable, to really try to one up each other and maybe try some different things with camera angles or try some different things that. Little pieces of things from the past and also other things that maybe nobody ever thought of. I mean, that's a real exciting thing. I'm not saying everything has to be right back to being 1993. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was a problem back then too, believe me. But again, something else that, more modernly can be done. Like maybe it wasn't possible back then, but could be done now. That would be the best. So maybe we'll get to that point. Let's see here. Yeah, no, and I see the comments here, Beast of Metal as well. And again, thank you for your super chat here as well. But also the discussion of, I mean, the Fox's investment in IndyCar. This is kind of an interesting part of it. I mean, I think I've said here on the show before, I've never really understood what Fox's intentions were with IndyCar, if their interest in the sport was really genuine. Like I felt when Fox, and maybe it was just a consequence of me being younger at the time, but I felt like when Fox came into NASCAR, their interest in the sport was genuine, and they had a lot of people that were involved in it that were longtime, reporters for it that knew what they were doing, and then also a mix of new people who also were eager to learn and kind of bring the sport. I mean, Chris Meyer's personality was very different back then. versus kind of what we saw on Fox this year versus some of the articles I've read from back in 2001, where he was kind of the everyman that would kind of introduce the sport to people that were outside of it and try to bring them in. And he deserves credit for accomplishing that because, yeah, there was a big groundswell of interest in the sport. Some of it, unfortunately, still tied to the loss of Dale Earnhardt, but others from it was just really competitive racing and good storytelling back then. When I look at it with IndyCar, I've never really understood what the motivation is. But now, yeah, they got this 1/3 interest investment, in IndyCar or through the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and, Penske and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, gosh, they're putting their money where their mouth is. I mean, that's a bigger investment. I would say that, I don't know if such a thing would have been possible in NASCAR in 2001 or, how much money could be invested into it, but I guess they're that interested in it. But I think, if that's what they're willing to do, they probably should just, their NASCAR part of the contract should go somewhere else because that's got to have an effect. If we're already seeing budget cuts on the NASCAR coverage and this year's coverage being what it was, I would think that they would probably just restructure things at this point. I don't know if they're going to, but it just seems like it seems like they're really that interested. If they're really willing to put that much money into IndyCar, I mean, my goodness, like, okay. And maybe that'll be for the best. Maybe they'll find, what they've had over there has been more enjoyable and maybe it'll help the sport. I don't know. I haven't watched much of the IndyCar coverage outside the Indy 500 this year. But maybe that's the direction they should go. I mean, I don't know. Speaking of which, I gotta say this too, and I know Fox covered this as well. I feel so terrible for the folks over the Bristol Motor Speedway and the Speedway Classic baseball game thing that they put together. I was very skeptical of that when this deal came up. It sounded like, well, that's kind of silly. Like, I mean, is anybody going to really want to, see a baseball game in the middle of Bristol? Are there even going to be good sight lines there or anything? Or is it even going to be very fun to do? Because, I mean, I would think like, you want to go to a NASCAR race, you want all the noise, you want all the cacophony and stuff. Is that really going to work well in a baseball thing? But I got to say, when they had the videos earlier this week and they showed the people coming out there, leaving the media center and showing the field and this extra, grandstand section they sent, it's like, okay, this actually looks pretty cool. And they had the whole thing with the pit crews, and they had the special uniforms, and they had they had pit stops that were part of the player intros. They used the track for whenever somebody scored a home run or something. Like, how wonderful. But then the weather steps in. I mean, talk about the true NASCAR experience. You get the rain that comes in, it screws everything up. They only can get a little bit of the game in. They got to postpone it. Just the worst case scenario. And then what? They run out of concessions. So you got people there that are just not happy. And I'm sure maybe they anticipated a smaller crowd. It felt very reminiscent to kind of some of the logistical issues they had at the first Busch Clash at the Coliseum, where they weren't sure, where there were big issues, the concession lines and the souvenir sections and stuff at the Coliseum that first year. It was packed. I mean, there was a reason, they're saying, oh, there's nobody here at the race. There's nobody watching. It's like, no, it's because everybody was in line, trying to get food or, whatever before getting in the stands and all that. And, this was back still during COVID protocols. So there were a lot of restrictions on how quickly people could get in there too. So there were a lot of problems that year. And unfortunately it sounds like a lot of that was happening here too. So I hate it for them. It looked like their heart was in the right place. They put together, a fun venue. They, if it were, a perfect, midsummer day, yeah, it would have been just as successful as they did the Wrigley Field game or the Field of Dreams game. I would have loved it if they would have been able to enjoy it that much more. But hopefully it's still pulled off. I heard they got the rest of the game in today. I didn't watch the rest of it today. But I hate it for everybody involved there because they just couldn't do anything about it. I hope it hasn't soured people's perception too much of taking into any events at Bristol. I mean, obviously we got the night race, in there and all that, coming up here too. I just feel terrible for the people involved because it looked like their heart was in the right place and they were really working their tails off on it. And maybe on a different day or a different week, it would have gone off without a hitch. But we'll see if they do it again. I don't know, but that's I do feel terrible for him in that sense. Any rate, going into where are we with this? Where are we? Yeah, the motorsports rain dance, exactly. Yeah, probably Bristol probably is used to crowd. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Steve-O, I think you're right. I think they probably just weren't uh used to it. Yeah, there were shots. I mean, at least there were a number of people on social media say that yeah, they ran out of food and then they ran out of beer and it's like, "Oh boy." I mean, in a baseball game, that's you're going to have a real problem at that point. Um but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It sounded like they got replenished for today. I saw some posts about that, so I'm glad they were able to kind of work something out. But man, it sounded like they were just having just a real difficult time out there, and I hate to see that because, yeah, I think it was a wonderful goodwill gesture between, you know, the baseball world and the racing world. I thought the intro they did on the Fox broadcast that Tom Verducci did was very good. I thought that it was comparable to, if not better than, some of the other ones we've seen this year. So yeah. Oh, that brings me to another point too. I faintly noticed this during the intro today, but Harris Liu and some others were bringing it up. Didn't like the use of AI in the intro that they did for the NBC one, which was too bad because already the music choice was kind of clunky. Like they did a good job of video footage there, but it wasn't as like hype as the Amazon music choice was. It wasn't as fun for that. And then like the little thing at the end where it showed what race it was, they kind of had this very like dressed down kind of AI looking thing there. I wasn't crazy about that. Maybe that'll be something they'll phase out here the rest of this stretch run this year, hopefully, because that would be kind of a fun thing to design, I would imagine. But we'll see if that comes up. Where are we with categories here? I think I saw a couple of tracks earlier. Where are we? Teams, we got a couple for tracks. Let's see here. Yeah, when you buy beers for $1.25 a piece, sell them to a captive audience for $18 a piece, running out should never happen. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, no, it's just hopefully. I mean, I don't know. I mean, social media doing what it does. I'm sure we're going to hear much more. About what happened during all that there. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Steve-O, you raised a good point. Why not? Why the one game? Why not an entire series? Was it an entire series? Is it? I mean, maybe that would be the saving grace. You can have a few days, and then you can kind of have people maybe do one during the day or during the night. That would be kind of fun. Is it a whole series? I thought it was just one game because they did that with the Field of Dreams thing, and they did that with the Wrigley Field one. Or is it Rackley Field? Whichever one. The one they did with the Satchel Paige Field. That was cool. Um, let's see. See, I'm not really a baseball show here, but yeah, our team already had that happen for this last one. Alrighty. Let's see. Okay. First question here. What was I thought I put this under tracks, but maybe this is under teams. I'll go ahead and read this one off because I have it up here. What was race team number 43 called before it became Petty Enterprises? What was race team number 43 called before it became Petty Enterprises? It was just the one game. Okay, yeah, I think so too. Yeah, that's too bad. That's too bad. And again, I mean, they could have been prepared better logistically for the concessions, certainly. But the weather, I mean, my God. I mean, and they were trying. The people in the booth were trying to fill the air, but I mean, you have NASCAR that's already really sensitive to rain weather, but even we have rain tires can do damp conditions. You bring in baseball where there is like zero tolerance for wet weather. I remember watching that Giants game when they clinched they clinched the pennant, and it was starting to rain, and they're just like, screw it, let's just get the rest of the game in. But yeah, What was race team number 43 called before it became Petty Enterprises? That is the question. Petty Racing, Lee Petty Engineering, the Money Team, Petty Mechanical, Petty Engineering. Yeah, talking about the dome over Bristol. I don't know. I think Mother Nature got confused as to where the NASCAR race was this week, and the rain just showed up in Tennessee. I think something just happened there. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know how realistic a roof over Bristol would be. I mean, then you have to install the ventilation system to make sure that works out. Not to say that that's not possible. I mean, you have monster truck rallies that happen in closed environments and stadiums and stuff like that. But I don't know. But for hours on end of cars going around and around in ovals there, I don't know. Oh, Steve-O, I appreciate the baseball knowledge here too. That's interesting. I didn't know that about the grounds crews. I do know that. I mean, I've seen that where they get very quick about covering the field there and making sure there's not as much of a delay. But that's interesting. What was race team number 43 called before it became Petty Enterprises? That is the question. The answer, Petty Engineering. Wayne Stell, I think you were the only one that got that. 611 Hornet, you're pretty close. Lee Petty Engineering. Maybe that was, I never really thought about it. I just assumed it was always like a family deal. But I wonder if maybe when this team very much started and it was just Lee Petty out there, I wonder if it was, the full name was Lee Petty. I mean, we were just there. We were there at Level Cross, and I didn't think to ask that. But that's a good question. 611 Hornets, yeah. But Wayne Stell, you got Petty Engineering. 611 Hornet, yeah, you basically got it there too. Hey there, Charlie. Charlie Fabrosis, thank you for tuning in. Yeah, the noise would be insane, Steve-O. Absolutely. Definitely agree. Okay, here we go. Whoop, hang on. Yeah, okay, I was in teams. Let me get to tracks here. Not that one. That was too easy. What race? Okay, next question here. This is in the tracks category. What raceway did Roger Penske fork out the big bucks for in 1973? What raceway did Roger Penske fork out the big bucks for in 1973? Yeah, I see Atlanta winning the game there. Yeah, Johnny Bench was Derek Cope's favorite player growing up when he did the interviews for the book, as it were. And then Johnny Bench was there for the game there, part of the opening ceremony. So that was cool to see. So a little bit of a kind of going full circle between the kind of the NASCAR baseball connection. Yeah, a lot of guesses from Michigan. Are you right? What raceway did Roger Penske fork out, the big bucks for in 1973? The answer is indeed Michigan. You guys are too good. You guys are too good. Sorry, I'm kind of leaning over here. Weird. Let me bring my mic arm back this direction. And then I can look there. Look a little less unsteady there. Ooh, okay. This is a good one. Next question here, folks. What speedway was the site of 3 of Bobby Labonte's first 6 career wins? What speedway was the site of 3 of Bobby Labonte's first 6 career wins? Don't look it up. Try to guess it here. In the meantime, I'm going to look up the inspection results. I don't think I saw it in the chat here, but I'll check regardless. Yes, 19 minutes ago. Yes, Cup Tech is complete. No issues. Byron is the winner. Cars to R&D, Chastain, Hamlin, Blaney, and Bowman. That is the answer there. So again, congratulations to William Byron for the win, and Joey Gase and the King of the Hill car will be the subject of your last place article for today. So we'll have that up later tonight. I apologize, I sound a little rough here. My allergy medicine is not has turned back into a pumpkin here at the end of the show. So we'll power through these last couple questions here that we'll wrap up here, folks. What speedway was the site of 3 of Bobby Labonte's first 6 career wins? We got a lot of guesses for Atlanta. We got Darlington, Texas World Speedway. Alrighty, and the answer is indeed Atlanta. That damn Pontiac. Old Bobby Labonte got that place figured out very early in his career. Atlanta is indeed the correct answer. Okay, so we'll do one more question here. Last question for the evening here, folks. Who is the only driver to win 5 Southern 500s at Darlington? Who is the only driver to win 5 Southern 500s at Darlington? Let you guys guess here. Make sure I didn't miss any other. Okay, I don't think I missed any super chats on there. Good. Make sure I got everybody's there. There you go, Marcus. So you're ready to have some corn later tonight. We actually had some last night there too. So hope you enjoy your corn tonight. We'll have our show wrap up here in just a moment, and we'll go from there. Alrighty. Who's the only driver to win 5 Southern 500s at Darlington? I guess this is for David Pearson, Richard Petty. We got a couple more for David Pearson. Who is the only driver to win 5 Southern 500s at Darlington? All right. I'll probably close that there for now. Alrighty, give up. We got guesses for David Pearson. Here we go. The only driver to win 5 Southern 500s at Darlington, the answer is Cale Yarborough. Cale Yarborough. Now, I have to look this up. Is that true? Is that true? Because I know Pearson had probably more wins at Darlington. But did he have more Southern 500 wins? And this is as of the late 90s. So yeah, Gordon would be later. Yeah, it says Cale here. It seems like it would be Pearson. But again, it's just talking Southern 500s, not the spring races. Okay, let's look that up because they might be wrong. It might be wrong. It's been wrong before. It certainly has. Yeah, I see 5 wins for 5 Darlington wins for Cale Yarborough. Southern 500 in 68, in 73, 74, 78, and 82. That's what I see here. Okay. So let's do... Yeah, senior had a lot. Exactly. Yeah, senior, Jeff Gordon. I mean, Darlington wins, and again, we got Southern 500 coming up here too. I always view that as like a real measure of like the best of the best. Like the Daytona 500's up there. Obviously, these days with it being kind of chaotic with the super speedway, chicanery, yeah, it's a little muddied at that point. But like Darlington wins, that's impressive. It's like the Coke 600 in that sense too. Although I think the 600s almost, you kind of reward more the team for building a car that can last that long. Darlington, very similar, but it's all in the hands of the driver and, competing against the rest of the field. I think Darlington wins are, to me, some of the most impressive, I think. And somebody that wins there multiple times, I mean, again, think about, Eric Jones being a multi-time Southern 500 winner, doing it with two different teams. Let me get Pearson's here. So I'll look at Darlington. Yeah, 10 wins at Darlington. So certainly more wins at Darlington than Yarborough. But let's look at kind of where they are in the seasons. Okay, so you won the spring race in 72, 73, 1970, 1968, 1974, 1976. And he won the Southern 500 four times. He won it in 76, 77, 79, and 80. Wow. What a time. What a time where you got Yarborough and Pearson. I always figured like Darrell Waltrip would spring up in here more. Of course, you guys mentioning Dale Earnhardt, and of course later Jeff Gordon. Absolutely. It gets to be a stacked group at that point. But yeah, Rebel 500, Rebel 500, Rebel 400, 400. So yeah, so Pearson had more Darlington wins, but Yarborough had more Southern 500 wins. So yeah, so let me look again here. So, okay, yeah, that's a runner-up finish there. So yeah, 76, 77, 79. Oh, and 1980 was the spring race. Okay, so no, it's three Southern 500 wins. 76, 77, 79. The two in the Mercury, one in Earnhardt's car in 79. And then, yeah, the one in the Haas-Ellington car was the spring race. So 3 Southern 500 wins. And Yarborough, all 5 of his Darlington wins were the Southern 500. 68, 73, 74, 78, 82. Wow. Well, okay, well, there you go. Well, that puts it in perspective there. Yeah, Jeff Burton was good there too. Yeah, exactly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's 5, right? Not 6. 73, 74. Yeah, 73, 70, 68, 73, 74, 78, 82. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Well, we'll be at Darlington before too much longer, but that's not what's coming up next week, though. So, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in on the show. Congratulations to William Byron for pulling off the win. Joey Gase for being your last place finisher will be the subject of the article later tonight. Stay tuned for the Kenny Irwin Jr. video, which I'm setting for part 1 will be on Tuesday, part 2 the following week. If you're interested in advance access to those videos, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock for $5 members and up. It's not in there yet, but it's going to be in there very soon. I would say within probably the next 12 to 18 hours thereabouts. We'll get that set up here. In the meantime, our next show is going to be next Sunday after the Cup race at Watkins Glen International. We'll talk about the Xfinity and Cup Series as well as the return of the Truck Series race to Watkins Glen. So we should have a stacked show next week. So hope to see you guys there as well. We'll find out how the broadcast goes. Will Beast Metal be right? And will we have a decent broadcast, or is it going to be a little lacking? Well, we're going to talk about it one way or the other. We'll be finding out there. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And I'll see you all next week.